Hey my good friend, Sam Haymart with Test Driven TV. It's been 2 years since we purchased our long-term test 2022 Ford Maverick Hybrid XL. And so now it's time to have a conversation about where it's been, what's happened, and the big question, would I buy it again? All right, my friends, so a quick little rundown of where this all started. In 2021, Ford announced the Ford Maverick. At that point in time, the headline was $20,000, 42 miles to the gallon. And well, I was hooked. So I ordered this in June of 2021 online. I put a reservation in. The vehicle got built in December of 21 and it arrived in the second week of January 2022. And so we're in the second week of January 2024 now. On the clock right now, just a tenth under 36,000 miles. And yes, I bought the extended warranty, so don't worry about me, I'll be fine. And in those miles, we've done a lot of content, and I'll just get it right out there. There is a playlist linked at the end of the video and also down below in the comments, which will cover all the videos about all the things we're about to talk about. We did some reviews, some test drives, and as you can see looking at the video, there have been a lot of modifications made to it, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But let's talk about the ownership experience first, because that's what a lot of people that might be thinking, boy, I like that Maverick, I might want one. Things you might want to know about what my experience has been like. So first of all, as far as reliability, problems with the truck overall, it's been pretty good. And my expectations were quite low. $20,000 vehicle in 2022 is one of the cheapest vehicles you can buy. And so I wasn't thinking I was getting a BMW by any stretch, but here's the deal. I've not had any failures that have left me on the side of the road. There have been a couple of issues, and the first one, it has grabby brakes. And we have a few videos on our playlist about that. And some of the things Ford has done, there have been 2 TSBs to try to fix those through software patches. Because the problem is essentially caused by software and the ABS system, they grab at slow speeds, like under 5 miles an hour, pulling into a parking space or in a drive-through. They will grab suddenly and unexpectedly and not predictably either. And so they have issued software fixes, 2 of them to date, that have pretty much gotten rid of it, but it still happens occasionally. Then there are the recalls. This vehicle has had 6 recalls on it. The first recall is the one that's made all of the headlines, and that is the fire recall. Now, a lot of people that hate hybrids ideologically, or they're stupid. They like to go online and troll, oh, another Maverick fire, blah, 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 and oh, how could you buy a Maverick when they catch on fire, blah, blah, blah. The reality is there are no fires. The recall was about a small batch of engines out there that they were never really able to track down that had machining issues, and some of them could, well, blow up for all intents and purposes. They could come apart, and when any engine comes apart and parts come out of the oil pan or the side of the block, that's a fire hazard. So what Ford did is, because they couldn't really find the engines, they didn't have a way of figuring out which vehicles had these problem engines, and to date there really aren't that many, if any, Mavericks that had caught fire. But the same engine was in Ford Escapes and Lincoln Corsairs, and those did have some fires here and there. So what they did is they put some holes in the bottom of the splash pan, took some shutters out of the grill shutter system so that it would be ventilated such that if the engine did combust, oil and fumes did get down in there, theoretically it might not be as bad. I had that recall done, and obviously it wasn't an issue because the truck's still here. It hasn't caught on fire. And again, if you actually look around out there and do some research, you'll find that there aren't very many, if any, people out there who have had this problem with a Maverick. The second recall was on airbags, the side curtain airbags. They found out after the fact that when they actually deployed, they didn't quite line up in the right spot they were supposed to, so there was a recall for that. And then there came a recall on the emissions system. The first emissions recall, that was just a software issue that was easily updated at the dealership. Now for the 3 open recalls that are on this truck, there is a second round of emissions updates. And that again is software issues that can cause this thing to run in different ways that don't pass emissions. Second thing, there is a software update that there's a recall out on. That's a software issue with the taillights where if one of your bulbs burns out in the back, you're supposed to have a crazy flashing situation. So they have a software update for that. Those two updates, somebody's actually coming out next week to my house and doing an update right in my driveway. And the last recall, which is still open, is the second round of the fire recall, right? So the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, they are not convinced that Ford has dealt with this problem, and most customers aren't either, because reality is if there's a batch of engines out there that Ford doesn't know where they're at and they could blow up at any time and cause a fire, the government's like, well, great, you drilled some holes in the bottom of the splash pan, whoop-de-doo, you're not preventing the problem, you're mitigating it. So Ford sent out a notice back in May of 2023, almost getting close to a year ago, still have not come up with a fix. And the reality is because the government's probably telling them the fix is a new motor, right? You put a new motor in it, that's how you fix that problem, and you put a motor in it that you know is not a bad one. Well, how do they figure out what's a good motor and what's not? Especially when you have a fleet of vehicles such as mine here that has 36,000 miles on it at this point. In my mechanical expertise and experience, if it hasn't blown up now because of a machining issue from the factory, it's probably not going to. It's not using oil, there's no metal in the oil, there's nothing wrong with this motor. They're still working on that, and at some point it's going to be a story, and we'll do a video on it when we finally get a notice from Ford what they're going to do, whether they're going to give me a new motor, whether it's just going to go away, or they're going to come up with some other sort of way of fixing it. Who the hell knows? So let's talk about wear and tear. A lot of people want to know, how does it last? How does it look? Well, look at it. This is a vehicle that's 2 years old. It's got 36,000 miles on it, which is a little bit over the average use. While it does look a little bit lived in inside, that's because it is. Most of the cars you see me standing next to talking to are press cars that are finely detailed. This one goes through the car wash about once a month. Yes, I use a car wash. Don't care. The black plastic here and there is starting to show a little bit of fading, or maybe it's just it needs some dressing on it. But the interior, wearing pretty well. The cloth seats, wearing pretty well. One of the problems a lot of people report on these interiors is because it's mostly cheap plastic. Fingernail scratches, scuffs, the plastic scratches easy. That's just a fact of life, and that's because it's cheap hard plastic. It was meant to sell at $20,000. I'm fine with that. People that paid 35 or 40 grand for a Lariat with all the crap on it, they're probably not happy with that, but they should have known. It's a $20,000 truck with a bunch of crap on it. That's what a Lariat is. I'm not bad-mouthing Lariats, but when you buy a vehicle that has a base price and you buy the most expensive one, you always have to keep in mind it was designed to sell at that lowest price, regardless of all the stuff you had put on it. That's just how cars work. And in the case here, it's a truck meant to sell for $20,000 when it was designed. So I'm great with it. Not everybody out there is. And when it comes to fuel economy, in previous review videos that we've done at 10, 20, 30,000 miles, it was up in the 41 average from tank to tank over the course of a year. And right now it's down to about 39.74 according to my spreadsheet. And that's measured at the tank. And that is mostly city driving. And that drop is mostly because I've added larger wheels and tires to this, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. But the bottom line is I think the tax of 1 to 2 miles per gallon coming down, not a bad price to pay for better traction, better stance, better looks, better ground clearance, all the things that these tires and wheels have brought me. And so big deal, 1 to 2 miles per gallon. I'm still getting well over what the EPA estimates for this truck, which is 37. So that's how this truck has lasted and worked for me. I'm happy with its performance. I'm happy with the payback on what I spent for it versus what it's cost to own and operate. And I've done all my servicing myself, oil changes and things like that, and it's been pretty inexpensive overall. It just is. I have a garage. I do all my stuff myself. So that segues us to what has been done to the truck. You can see it certainly doesn't look stock. It started out as a base XL with steel wheels, and quite a few modifications have been done on it. Videos are out there on our playlist for every single modification I'm about to run through here on our list, an unbox, an install, a review. So if you see any of these things, you want to know more about it, go to our playlist. There's a video on all of this stuff individually. And the first one right up front is a custom grille that has a Raptor look to it. I'm not trying to make this a Raptor. I just like the way the grille looks, and I didn't really care for the stock grille. It's got the 3 lights on it that light up, and it's just a nice little piece. It was a big install. Again, video on our playlist. Coming around the corner, this has the Air Design fender flares on it. These are a pretty expensive little thing. Well, they're not a little thing, they're big. They're expensive though. They're way overpriced in my opinion, but I do really like the way they fit. I do like the way they look, and especially with the look that has been put together here, I think they just really look factory. Wheels and tires, 245 65/17 Firestone Destination AT2 tires, mounted to our LP Adventure 17x8 wheels, a company mostly associated with building wheels for Subaru. And this wheel tire combination by itself gives me an extra ½ inch of ground clearance. Then I did a 1-inch leveling kit from Zone Off-Road, and we also have a video on that, the install and the review. And so I have a little bit over 1 inch of increased ground clearance at the front, which makes it a lot easier to take this out on a dirt road or a trail here in the desert and not worry about scraping the underneath of this truck out there on all of the crap. And it happens. It's very easy to do on these trucks because they're unibody, and that bumper right at the bottom of that plastic bumper is steel that you will drag across anything that you get too close to. So that has been a big deal that has, I think that was money well spent doing this particular upgrade. As I mentioned, 1 to 2 miles per gallon is my outcome on that. Big deal. It's worth it. At the back of the truck, you can see a few more things that were added to this. The Kiko Sport Bar. Now, this is not a roll bar. This is a style sport bar. It's purely for aesthetics. That's it. It doesn't have a load rating. It's not meant to really bolt anything to, although a set of lights might be nice up on top, and I've talked about doing that, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. This is a great product that I've tried out and I like, and it just sort of adds a little bit of ruggedness to the overall look of the vehicle. That's where it's at. And then also you can see there on the back is a trifold tonneau cover. And I'll point out that when we originally did our first video on the tonneau cover, the sport bar was not in place, and they are not compatible if you're going to ask that question in the comments down below. As you can see, it sits there, but if I need to get into that bed, I can't fold it open because the bars are in the way. Now, there are compatible tonneau covers available for this sport bar, and it just happens to be that Kiko sells those. If you have one of the roll top style or whether you have a soft roll up, there are a few different options there, but I never got around to it. I don't get into that very often, and when I do need to haul something in the back of my truck, I just slide that thing right off. It's no big deal. It takes about 30 seconds. And speaking of hauling things, that gets us to the next couple of things. First of all, the damper that gives this thing the soft open doesn't come from the factory. That is a Ford accessory, but this is the big thing right here. I put in this nice little thing, which is the decked slide out cargo drawer. Look at that. Look at that. This can hold a lot of weight on it, and this is one of 2 different variations that they sell. This is the one that comes all the way out 100%. They sell one that comes out 70%. It sits a little bit lower. It's a little bit less expensive, and believe me, this is one expensive product. It just is. It's made in America, but you can hear how rugged it is. It's got steel rollers. It's got a big heavy steel frame. The good part is you can put a lot of weight in it. If you have trades, camping, whatever, it's nice to pull that out. My intent is to use that for a roll-out camping platform for a kitchen, and then be able to push it back in there and lock it up, go hiking, do whatever, come back. Squirrels and bears and other people haven't gotten into my kitchen and so forth. So that is a really cool thing, but it's not for everybody. I'll point that out. But if it's for you, it's probably one of the best made products in its class out there on the market. So the last thing is the Maverick letters on the back. Flat black goes with the rest of the look of the truck. I will point out there used to be white letters there. In the first year, we did a makeover on the truck that was a completely different look. Some of you may remember that if you watch our channel. And that wasn't for everybody either. I kind of like being an artist once in a while, and I wanted the retro look that was sort of in the 70s on mini trucks, and I got that out of my system, and then I went for this look. There might be another one down the road, I don't know yet, but that is the second set of letters I put on the back, and yes, there's a video on that as well. The other accessories that I've added to the truck are on the interior. Down on the floor are the rubber Ford floor mats, and these are the all-weather tray style mats. Now, the aftermarket does have some better ones out there. WeatherTech makes some nice ones, and there's quite a few brands on Amazon from China that are just sort of off-brand hooty-doo things. And I got these because they were right from my dealership, and I was able to use my Ford Pass money on those, and they've worn well. I'm happy with them. They look lived in, as I mentioned. The other big thing for the interior, and again, there's a video on this, is the satellite XM radio tuner that connects via Bluetooth. And that was important to me because I'm an XM radio guy, and this is an audio system that's absolute crap. You can't do anything with it. And so far, the connection with the Bluetooth on this has worked quite well. There are a few little glitches with it here and there, but until Ford comes out with a better audio and infotainment system for this truck, which hopefully they do for 2025, this is as good as it gets. So the grand finale is the big question: would I do it again? And the simple answer is yes, absolutely, without question. If something happened to this truck and I had to replace it, I would be going down to my Ford dealership and finding out how it is that I can get another one. And I would probably pay quite a bit more for it at this point. Not only has the price come up exactly $5,000 in 2 years for a 24 model matching this vehicle, but I would probably have to, buy one from the dealership, which means it wouldn't be easy. Let me just put it like that, okay? But the bottom line is even though the price has come up about $5,000 to $7,000 on the Maverick across the board, depending on which model you get, you still can't find a competitor out there that matches that price structure. You just can't. And Hyundai has the Santa Cruz. It's a nice truck. It's also on my buy it list, but it's quite a bit more expensive. It's a more upscale product. That's just the bottom line. It costs more because you get more. It's not really apples and oranges. No, it's not apples to apples. It's apples and oranges. It's just a different product. It's not something you can compare neck and neck for a lot of different reasons. So yes, I'd buy it again. Yes, it's had problems. It's got issues, lots of recalls. As I said, people get spooked by those things. I just don't. I've been around cars all my life. Big deal, recall, come fix it. It's free repairs on your vehicle, and it's just not that big of a deal. And I give Ford a little bit of slack because this was a vehicle that was entirely developed almost during the pandemic. And so imagine you have a project that you're working on with maybe hundreds of people, and suddenly all of you get sent home to work from home and do these things separately. You know how that went. Most of us remember how screwed up everything got at work during that period of time. So that's where this was born. So I give them a little bit of slack. And keep in mind, I'm somebody who, the previous Ford that I owned nearly 20 years ago, that was a lemon law buyback. I sued Ford. They bought the car back. It was so bad. It took me almost 20 years before I came back and bought another one. That's kind of where it was at. And it was all about the price, the fuel economy, and what they did here. And so they've redeemed themselves, even though it's not perfect. It's still the best game in town if you're looking for a base model compact pickup, period. So there it is. Now, as I mentioned, you might have heard me talk about that playlist, right? There it is. 75 plus videos on the Ford Maverick, the biggest playlist anywhere on YouTube. There's test drives, technical how-tos, installs, news, everything's right there. Have some fun, watch it. Better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there and stay notified of everything we do. Either way, stay tuned.